Welcome to the Maureen Pound Show, where we hear extraordinary insights from cool business people. Now, today I've got a really cool dude joining me, Mr. Marcus Prentice from Feel Good Events. He is all about parties. He's been putting on amazing parties for people for most of his adult life, and he's going to share the insights around what sort of parties are we headed for post-COVID, and also all those key tips and tools and ideas that will support you to put on a fantastic party in 2021. So welcome to the show. Welcome, Marcus.
Hi, Maureen. How you going?
Yeah, good. I always like to jump in straight in the deep end when I start. So, we know you're all about parties and you're, darn good at them. But would you like to share with us something else, a bit quirky or something that might be a bit unusual about you?
I'm an avid cyclist. I spend a lot of time, if I'm not doing parties and events, riding my bike. My kids are getting older now, so I get a lot more time to do those sorts of things without upsetting my wife, which is always a good thing. So I ride my bike a lot. I probably ride 200 to 300 Ks a week, and sort of enter in. I do some racing and enter into some long distance sort of events, which are crazy sort of 250, 300 kilometre days in the saddle. That's one of my other passions, along with parties and helping people throw awesome events.
And you're a true cyclist when you know it's not a seat but a saddle.
That's right, exactly. Exactly right.
Excellent. And so, what sort of got you first interested in parties?
I guess my love of music. I've always loved music, and that sort of started from an early, a lot of teenagers and stuff love music, when they're young, and that just sort of progressed into parties. So probably from about 16, I got into DJing, and, once I experienced doing parties and playing music for people, and then that progressed into nightclubs and all that sort of stuff as I got a bit older. And then, down the track sort of really went into more, I guess, what we do now, party decorating and helping people plan parties and create awesome sort of party experiences. So it's just sort of progressed along the way. And, I wouldn't have chosen, in the early days, I didn't think that I was going to be doing this as a full-time job, but I'm really glad I am, and I can't think of doing anything else. So yeah, it helps me get out of bed every day. I really do love doing it. And this year's been a real challenge, as we know, especially for events with COVID and all the restrictions, but it's just reinforced even more how much I love doing what I do. So it's
excellent.
Good.
And so I one of the reasons I got you on is, I think you're great and what you do is pretty special, and you've helped me out with a few parties. But also that people are really looking forward to getting out and reconnecting with loved ones and friends and partying.
Yeah.
How important do you think it is to people to be able to celebrate and party?
Well, I think this year's really reinforced, how much people have missed having parties and that connection with other people, whether it be in a party experience or just, catching up with friends and family. Everybody, has really missed that. And so I think going forward, from a party perspective and events, once we're allowed to do what we, potentially used to be able to do, people will appreciate it a lot more. I know I do. We've taken for granted a lot of things this year, and, that connection with people in a party experience or it might even be a corporate event, conferences, all sorts of, any type of event. I think a lot of people have really missed that, and that connection, with people and that experience is what people have really missed. So hopefully going forward, there will be, people will be more, excited about going to parties, whereas before maybe they were like, oh, not another party, we got invited to parties all the time, I'm a bit bored with it or whatever. Maybe they'll be more excited and more, excited to put on their own events as well. So we'll wait and see. Watch this space.
Yeah. Now, one of the key things I wanted to talk to you about is we had a conversation, a while ago, and So I'll start with the story. So when I was a child, growing up as youngest of 9 children, my parents loved parties, and we used to invite all sorts of people to our house, weird and wonderful, and move the dining room table aside in this small room in our dining room, and and dance and have fun. And we talked about years ago, and it really worked. And one of the aspects was, even though it was a small space, that it really worked. So what I want to talk to you about today is the key things that matter around, space and lighting and setup, and, because it's just not, it takes more than just people arriving at your house or in the park with you, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And look, there are so many things that can influence whether a party works or not. Some people think that you need to have a lot of people to make a great party experience. Look, having more people creates better party energy because there's simply more people in the space. But really, at the end of the day, there's so many other factors that influence it, whether it be your venue space, how you decorate the space, the lighting, the entertainment. There's probably 8 or 9 different things, the food and the drinks that you serve, even down to what clothes and shoes that people wear will have some sort of impact on the guest party experience and how the party goes. So
just on that, what do you mean, the shoes and the clothes they wear? Tell me about that.
Well, one of the key things we ask a lot of our clients, what sort of party experience you want to create, and quite often one of the common things that comes up is, we want to have lots of people dancing and having fun. But, if you think of a wedding, typically people are dressed in more formal attire, and a lot of, especially the females, are dressed in high heels. Now, I'm not a female and I don't know what it's like to dance in high heels, but I've seen what happens when people are dancing in high heels. They just can't dance all night. So the dancing is quite limited because people aren't wearing comfortable shoes. You don't go for a run in high heels when you're going for a jog. So dancing is a form of exercise, and so you need to be comfortable. So having, just the right clothing, whether it be, more of a relaxed dress code rather than a formal dress code, being able to maybe change your shoes out. So, if it's a formal occasion like a wedding, we quite often suggest, that the couple encourage guests to bring sneakers, especially in the case of the females, to put on later on the night when the dancing starts. So they can still look nice for the first part of the wedding, but later on when the fun is, people are on the dance floor, they can put on some different shoes and be more comfortable. And if you watch at a wedding typically, or even any sort of formal corporate event, if they can, the ladies will usually take their shoes off. Now, from an OH&S point of view, that's getting harder and harder, and a lot of venues will put a stop to that, because if somebody drops a glass, that can then become an issue and they're liable and those sorts of things. So it's becoming harder and harder. So just thinking of these minor things can sometimes have a big impact on your event or wedding or whatever. So even something as simple as, people don't often think about the temperature of the space. If the temperature is too cold, if you've invited everyone to your house and you're having it in your back garden and it's the middle of winter and people are freezing cold and they don't realise that it's going to be in your back garden, they're going to go home because they're cold and uncomfortable, and it doesn't encourage a great party experience. So if you were to ask me what is probably the biggest mistake that people make, it would be that they don't think of the guest experience. And if you think of the guest experience when you're doing your planning, you're going to create a better party from the beginning, and more likely to be a success in your eyes and in everybody else's as well. So
yeah, so I think that's really important. We do that in business. We think of, from our customers' perspective, what problems they're going to have, what solution, do they want to that. So I love sort of using that same philosophy.
Yeah.
So we've covered off shoes, and I actually went to a wedding recently, Marcus, just in start of Feb before the lockdown, and a guest was wearing sneakers all through the party, and it just worked. I mean, she was stunningly beautiful. She had a long dress and she had these sneakers, and it was like a bit of a statement.
Yeah, yeah. And look, if sometimes the ladies can get away with, if they've got a long dress on, sometimes you wouldn't even know what sort of shoes they've got on. So especially the bride, quite often the bride will wear comfortable shoes. You think she's got high heels on, but she doesn't. And it just makes it for a better experience just from that point of view. And that's only one minor detail in the whole scale of having an event. So
yeah. So you talked about that, so I think that's interesting. It's almost like providing your guests with extra information. So
yeah,
one of them around the fact that they could bring a change of shoes, so that more people are going to want to dance for longer, which adds more atmosphere to your party. And then the second one you raised was temperature. So tell me more about how you can support your guests around this.
Well, I guess from, quite often temperature, as I say, it's only a minor thing that people might not think about. And, especially going forward with COVID, there's going to be a lot more outdoor events. So it's thinking of the things like if you're going to have something outdoors and it's in the middle of summer and in Melbourne, that can, the weather can go either way. It can be, 40 degrees or it can be 20 degrees. Thinking of the guest experience. So, have I got enough shade? Even things as simple as having some fans, if it's going to be super hot, having like sunscreen and all the basics. If you're having a nighttime event, thinking of the things like, insect repellent and all those sorts of things. They're all minor things. But if your guests are getting eaten alive by mozzies during the night, they're probably going to want to go home or, leave early. So basically our idea is to keep guests there as long as possible and having as much fun as possible. So every little aspect that we can improve on to make that experience better, i.e. sunscreen or shade or the right temperature. One of the biggest mistakes, and I brought it up before, is a lot of people just go, well, having a party and we'll invite everyone in, they're just standing in the back garden, and it gets cold at night, even in summer, and people are cold, and so they don't want to stick around. And especially if there's nothing really much happening, they've just sort of, it's more of a gathering than sort of a party with dancing and that sort of thing. People get bored, they're cold, they go home. So, we try and eliminate all these little things that will hopefully create a better experience as we keep talking about.
Yeah, and I think you raised a good point there with Melbourne's weather. It's sort of think of the contingencies.
Yes.
We're going to need fans because it's so hot. Are we going to need heaters because it's so cold? Especially in those outdoor settings.
That's right. And even in summer, like
rains.
That's right. Even in summer, people think, oh, we won't need heaters. And we've done lots of events that at night it can get down to quite cool temperatures. And if your guests aren't busy and moving around and dancing, then they get cold. And so it affects the outcome of the event.
Yeah. Another thing that you've raised with me, well, often we're thinking, oh, is our space big enough? And we think we're going to get 100 people and we get 50 people. So tell me the mistakes people make around space.
So this is probably one of the biggest mistakes they make when choosing a venue. And it's not because, it's just simply because people aren't experiencing this sort of thing. So they overestimate how much, say, 100 people will take, how much space they'll take up. And it's usually a lot less than what people think. So if you were to ask me what sort of size space for 100 people, I usually say comfortably a square metre per person is plenty. Now, going forward with COVID, this is going to obviously be very different because, the rules that are coming in is one person per 4 square metres, which means you need, 4 times the size that I would normally suggest that you need. Now, you also need to factor in, furniture and any other decor that's going to take up space. So you then obviously need to room for that. But yeah, the biggest mistake people make is that they overestimate. They have a basketball-sized stadium for 100 people, and the atmosphere is just simply lost because people like to be connected, as we talked about before. And one of the funny things that I've sort of watched over the years when it comes to dance floors and people dancing is you can have a dance floor that's massive, but people still dance on top of each other. No matter how big the dance floor is, they always want to dance next to each other. And that's going to be something that's really quite hard if people have got to be socially distanced going forward. It will sort of take away from, how people react on the dance floor, and they're going to have to be more spread out. And, in New South Wales, Victoria is very different right now, but New South Wales, they can have people dancing, but it's still only a limited number. So then it's sort of, people are deciding, do I want to have those sort of restrictions? So, yeah, it'll affect how many people have at their events and weddings, and, do they want to have, restrictions on how many people dance? Because ultimately you want everybody dancing. I know if I have a party, that's what I want. I want everybody on the dance floor. And if, I'm told that I can only have 20 people dancing at my wedding, I'd personally would probably wait until the restrictions are a bit easier and you can have majority of your guests dancing. But I like the analogy you used before with your family and having a small space. It's just the living room, and you move the tables, and that quite often that's very common in Australia, and for lots of parties they just have it at home, and they do, and those parties work really well because the energy is high because everyone's dancing together and they're not all spread out, and sometimes those are the best parties.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and even if you're not dancing, you're in that space on the sidelines and you're getting the energy from it.
exactly right. And so you don't need 100 people, you only need 20.
Yeah, yeah. And so tell me a little bit about, we just mentioned furniture there, move the table, but what do you suggest around furniture and sitting down and, your overall philosophy on that?
Yeah, so I sort of follow that. I don't know if you've ever heard that saying that seating is the new cancer. People are sitting down too much, they're not exercising and moving around enough. And I sort of say that seating is a bit like cancer to your party. If you have too much seating in your event, everyone will find their comfort zone and they come in and they sit down, especially if you're having a sit-down dinner. And they quite often will sit there for most of the night because they feel comfortable and they're less likely to dance. You can still have a great party with a sit-down event, but I usually say unless you're having a formal sit-down dinner, the less furniture the better. Now, obviously, you do need some sort of furniture, but usually it's more cocktail style, bar tables, cocktail seating, maybe some ottomans and stuff like that. But yeah, if you've got 100 people, I usually suggest no more than a seating for, say, 30 or 40 people. Otherwise, I feel like you're overdoing it, and people move around anyway. So, it works out for everyone.
Yeah. And what about, you've been doing parties all these years.
Yeah.
What about the number you invite and you think you're going to come to the number that actually do come, because that then affects your arrangements as well. And I know it's a bit different from weddings where you actually, people have to you don't formally usually stand people up for weddings, but a lot of people go, yeah, I'll come, and then they don't.
Yes, exactly. And this is another one where people, I don't know if they always assume that everyone's going to show up, but from my experience in doing parties for nearly 30 years, if somebody says to me they've invited 100 guests, I usually halve it, and it's usually around that sort of number. So 50 to 60% would be a norm. As you say, weddings are a bit different. They're more a formal occasion, so you usually know RSVPs, but if it's just a general party or event, you don't always get RSVPs. And even most of the time when guests say they're going to come, sometimes things happen on the day and they the weather's too hot and they know it's going to be outside, so they I don't want to go and stand in 40-degree heat, or it's the middle of winter, as we say, and they don't want to be cold. So those things can affect it on the day. But yeah, usually 50 to 60%, I sort of say. And if you get more than that, you're doing really well. And that's not to say sometimes you might invite 100 people and you might get 80 people that come to your party, but they might not all be there at the same time. So if you work out your space based on, say, 60 people coming and they're going to be there at the one time, then that's you probably don't need as much furniture, you don't need as big a space. Catering and stuff, you still need to think about if extras do show up, you still want to have food and drink available even if they do come and go during the night. Quite often people have multiple functions. We're all busy and popular people these days, so we get invited to multiple things on the same day. So sometimes people will do, visits, and then they'll go off to another function or event. But the idea is to make your party exciting so they want to stay at yours and don't go to somebody else's.
Yeah. And so what about alcohol too? So, Australia used to be a bit of a, BYO culture back when I was a kid. And you might, mum and dad have some, beers and stuff there, but then people would bring stuff. And even all our restaurants used to be more BYO, and now they're more licensed. So what's the norm so you're respectable and, doing the right thing in terms of supplying alcohol?
Yeah, well, it's sort of, society is changing a lot, and the youth are typically drinking a lot less than, I guess, from our, when we were younger. So it's funny, but you actually probably in a lot of cases, if it's a younger sort of event, need less alcohol. Look, when it comes to alcohol and how much to serve, everybody's different, and a lot of it is focused on or based around their budget. If you're on a tight budget, you might just do beer and wine. And again, you need to think about when it comes to alcohol, the mix of guests. So if you've got a lot of guys and they typically drink a lot of beer, obviously you then need to buy more beer, or vice versa. If there's a lot more female guests, you might want to do more ciders or wine. And again, it comes down to your budget. If you've got a good budget, then great, have cocktails, and that will make your party a bit more different and exciting. But yeah, if you're hiring a venue, a lot of the time the host will only pay for a bar for maybe the first couple of hours, and then let guests know that they need to buy their own drinks after that. So everybody's different, but a lot of the time it's just based around your budget. But if you've got in your budget, you want to. I usually have more rather than less, and I would say if you ask me, how many drinks, maybe 5 or 6 at a minimum for each guest, but it depends on how many hours they are at their event too. If it's a long afternoon that could go into the night, they're going to drink more. If it's just for a few hours, obviously they're going to drink a lot less. And what sometimes happens too is people freak out a bit, and because when people arrive at parties, they usually have the first few drinks quite quickly, and then typically will slow down with the drinking consumption. So people then panic and go, I haven't got enough drinks, but quite often they do. It's just people start quite strong and then slow down after that.
Yeah, sometimes you get nervous as well when they arrive, and, have a few extra drinks at the beginning.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, always in the first hour, people will have, usually 2 or 3, but they're not typically drinking 2 or 3 in the next hour. So again, it depends on the type of event, the temperature. If it's warm, they might drink more. If it's cold, they might drink less. It depends on the drinks you're serving. If they're nice, yummy cocktails that taste like, they're not really alcohol, you might drink them a lot quicker. There's sort of all those variables.
Yeah. And what about music? So you've talked a bit about dancing.
Yeah.
What's the fail-safe way to ensure that you've got good atmosphere with your music?
Well, music is super, super, super important, and I would say that because I've been a DJ for 30 years. But it depends on what outcome you want. So if it's a gathering and you're just having you just want music in the background, it's more like a soundtrack, what we call a soundtrack to your event. It's not as important. You just want to have music that's comfortable at the right level that people will just, it's almost like music, it's just in the background, and so people can talk and communicate. So you might have something like that for more of a corporate event where you want your guests to, be able to communicate quite easily. At a party, obviously, if you want dancing, you need to make sure that the music you choose is suitable for dancing, and your guests are going to want to dance to that. So there's lots of things you can do. You can ask your guests to maybe send you their favourite song before the event. If you've hired good entertainment, typically a DJ or a band, they know what to play anyway, and they will play a good variety of music, and they will read the crowd on the night so they can change it up. And that's what you want. You want flexibility as well. You want to be able to change it. If you've started playing 80s music and everyone there doesn't want to listen to 80s music and they're not really dancing, but then you put on some 90s and the dance floor's packed, well, obviously you need to be able to react to that. So being able to have flexibility and be able to change it up on the night or the day is a big thing. And sometimes, if you're on a tight budget, you might just have your phone playing connected through a speaker, and that can be fine, but it doesn't, then you've got to manage it all night. You haven't got, it's not being reactive to what's happening at the party. So having somebody control the music, i.e. a DJ, in that regard can make a big, big difference. And if you want dancing, music is super, super important. If you don't want dancing, then just do background music and you save yourself the money. So a lot of people underestimate the expense that they should put into entertainment, and music is super important. But I always, if it's in your budget and you've got a better budget, have multiple forms of entertainment to make your party more exciting. Have dancers, have a band and a DJ, have multiple forms to really make the party, something to talk about.
Yeah, because that's what people want. You want people go, oh, I went to Marcus's 40th. It was amazing.
That's right. That's what I want. So, yeah, and it's, we talk about having a party story to tell. What do you want your guests, what story do you want them to tell after your event? And if you want them to say that was one of the best parties I've been to, you've got to think of that in your planning from day one. So when it comes to the decor, the lighting, the entertainment, what's going to make it a story to worth telling in years to come. Maureen was on the table waving a bra in the air or something silly, crazy like that. You want to create an atmosphere that is worth talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And what are you about? type of party I always find really interesting is the fancy dress.
Yes.
Having a theme, because
Yep.
some people love it and some people hate it. So some
Yes.
people hate it so much that they refuse to go to the party or dress up.
Yeah.
But when it's done right, it just adds so much atmosphere.
It really does, and we try and encourage it as much as possible. And it makes the party more exciting from day one. So if they know that it's, you know, a Gatsby theme or a Hollywood theme or 80s or something like that, you're right in saying that some people don't like dressing up. And I always like to give people the option to dress up or not, and to what extent they want to do. So, for example, you talked about my 40th, which was years ago. I had a dress-up party for mine, but I didn't want guests not to come because they didn't want to dress up. So I made it optional. Said, we'd love you to see you dress up in whatever you want to suit the particular theme. I had a jungle theme, and people's interpretation of that is what makes it exciting. So they, you know, having a jungle theme, people came all, you know, safari or, you know, commando, all sorts of different, you know, their interpretations were all very different. It's the same if you did a Gatsby theme or an 80s theme. They'll all come as something different. So that makes it exciting from the beginning, because before they've even come to your event, they're thinking about it, they're thinking about their costume, and it really, as you say, it really does add atmosphere to the event. So, you know, that along with all the awesome decor that you might tie in with that and some nice cocktails and great music, you're already set a good foundation for a great party.
Yeah, and there's, you know, nothing like seeing a few Tarzans on the dance floor, Marcus.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So, you know, and after a few drinks, some of those costumes, you know, you find all left around at the end of the night. I do a lot of uni balls DJing, and they have quite often have fancy dress, and half the costumes get left behind, and you wonder what they've gone home wearing. But it makes it more exciting.
For my 21st, I did a masquerade, and that was quite good because it wasn't. And I even on the invite said, if it's too hard, here's a cutout. And some people did cut it out and coloured it in and put it on their face. But it was like all people do, you know, a touch of something, which is another way, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's exactly right. I did the same, a touch of jungle. So it might even just be a headband or something on your wrist, or, you know, it can be, and, you know, masquerade is a great theme for the fact that you can dress up, you know, normally and just wear a mask, and you can take it off, and it's not a big, people don't have to go to a lot of expense. Sometimes with costumes, you know, people feel, there's a big added expense. And again, you don't want your guests not to come because they can't afford to buy a costume or they don't really like dressing up. But from an atmosphere point of view, if majority of your guests dress up, it makes such a big difference to the atmosphere and the energy in your party.
And I always find people mix better too, because it's a clear icebreaker. Oh,
it really is.
You Tarzan, you know, no, I'm Jane.
That's right. That's right. You know, 80s parties, you know, if you come dressed as Bon Jovi or something like that, people always laugh, and it does. It's a real icebreaker, and so it is a great, you know, addition to your event.
Okay, great. And, you know, so there's the option to try and handle all this yourself, or there's the option to get your input, your expertise, because I know you share that with people when you help them put on parties, but you also give them, you know, supply a DJ, lighting, smoke machine, as you did for us. That was a real hit. Share the sort of things that you can support people with putting on their parties if they don't want to do it themselves.
Yeah. So this again comes down to people's budgets and what experience they want. So if they want to really enjoy the experience themselves, and they don't want the stress of thinking of all these things, a lot of people wouldn't even think of these things anyway, but all the hassle of maybe, you know, what decorations am I going to have, what entertainment, lighting, food, all those sorts of things, we can organise the whole lot, and we do the planning side of things. And we're also event decorators, so we will come in and totally transform your event space with decor to suit your theme or style. So not everybody has a theme, so not everyone has a jungle party or a 80s party or a Hollywood party, but, you know, they might want it, you know, they want it all gold or black and gold or pink, or, you know, so we'll do different styles as well. So it comes down to the client's budget, how much work they want to do themselves. You know, one of the biggest issues that when we speak to our clients is, you know, they find it very stressful, and usually that's caused by underestimating because they haven't maybe organised parties before and leaving it all to the last minute. So, you know, speaking to us first can sometimes give them more insight into what actually has to be organised, even if they want to take on some themselves, and a lot will take on, you know, the planning part, and we might just do the decorating, or we help them from start to finish. So again, it depends on the client's requirements.
Okay, beautiful. So if you want to really enjoy your own party, I historically don't, because I'm always worried about everything. You know, they're getting the food out of the oven and trying to do the music, and is everyone having a good time, and why are people leaving early? So if you don't want to be like me and you want someone to take care of it all, then contact Marcus at Feel Good Events. As you can see, he says it as it is. He's got some really good ideas that you mightn't have thought of before, and it might actually change your party from it was another 21st or it was another 30th to something that people will be talking about for years. And you know, and you only turn 21 once, you only turn 30 once, 40 once, and especially next year, Marcus, when we've all been locked down for so long this year, there's no reason not to party, is there?
Exactly right. We're really hoping that once restrictions lift in Melbourne, that people are just party crazy, and you know, we're crazy busy to make up for all the fun times we've missed out on this year. So yeah, definitely, you know, we really want to encourage people to have more parties next year. That's for sure.
Excellent. And another thing that you can do is another reason I got Marcus on today is because I think he's a legend, obviously. But also that, you know, you're supporting small business. You know, Marcus is, you know, really, Feel Good Events hasn't really run this year, and they're raring up to go. They've got, you know, lots of good stuff in that warehouse, in that big warehouse.
Yep.
Ready to go for people. So if you're thinking, even if you don't know your date for next year, Marcus, is it all right if people still contact you?
Absolutely. And one of the hard things at the moment is your clients are definitely, you know, excited about having events, but they're just not sure when. But yeah, even just start thinking about your party, give us a call. We can start giving you some more ideas, and then you can start your planning at least, because it does take longer than what people think to plan a party or a wedding, especially. So yeah, get in touch and we can just start the process anyway. And then once you're more sure on a date, we can then start locking things in.
Okay, beautiful. And thanks to Gay Worley, who just made a comment, Marcus. She wore it was a black and white party, so she went to as a nun. Everyone else wore black and white. She stood out.
Yeah. And that's a good theme to do. It's easy to do, and people don't mind dressing up for that one. So that's definitely a good theme.
Another good idea. Okay, excellent. Well, it was lovely to chat to you. Thanks for taking time out of your day to share all. We really appreciated it.
No, thank you. It's been good to chat.
Excellent. Okay, so there you have it. Marcus from Feel Good Events. If you're thinking that you need to celebrate 2021 in any way with your family and friends, and he's a great bloke to contact. The website is feelgoodevents.com.au. They've also got some good party ideas on the website and some good videos. And there's a transition video to what a room looks like before it's done up to, you know, what can be created. So thanks for joining us once again on the Maureen Pound Show, where we get extraordinary insights from cool business people, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.